Welcome to another episode of cybersecurity with Avanced Group. Everyone knows there's a lot of going on about AI security in many different forms of threat modeling, and a lot of work is coming out of OWASP and MITRE and other places. But I have been asked from several friends with their own startups and businesses in hardware or software about what regulations they need to comply with. And there is some regulations or standards are coming out from NIST, like NIST AI, risk management framework, and other things. But I found the EU AI Act the most comprehensive one, and especially because I came across some verbiage that describes the penalties for not complying with this act. The amount of penalties remind me of GDPR, and I'm not going to get into the politics of what the U.S. is going to do and what our government has been advocating in EU. EU is a different territory, and this, as you can see from this AI Act, if you are doing anything related to AI in EU, you have to comply, whether you're from US or elsewhere. So the EU AI Act is quite long, and basically, like any other one of these regulatories, it's extremely difficult and boring to read for an engineer because, like a lot of other types, it's written by lawyers. No offense to any of our friends in legal community, but as an engineer, you don't have time to sift through hundreds of pages of documents. So I listed the where you can find the EU AI Act, but I'm going to give a credit to ISACA, where I found the first summary. And even though I spent several hours reading their summary, it was really good starting point to get my bearing. And then because I wanted to, basically create my own understanding and sort of do the trust and versus verify, I went back to EUAI Act, and then I started verifying what I found in the summary. And basically what I found out, let me get out of this the slideshow. And what I found out is you basically can skip the first 40, 50 pages and just get to the articles. And there would be a lot of the stuff in the article, like especially in the definitions, and then many other articles that follow. And they're not few of them, they're like 70, 80 or plus. But at least here you can skip a lot of the legalese and get into that. So I decided to do a sort of an overview of this, and hopefully this will not be a very long overview. So like I said, you can go to these articles and look. So the first thing I think we want to talk about is the key roles. So they define a set of key roles, and this is in Article 3, you can find the roles. And the thing to remember about these roles is that when they mention a person, they basically, it could be a natural person or a legal entity that is established within EU. So when you hear person or you see person, think about either an actual person or a legal entity. And then sometimes I use anyone, and when I mean anyone, it's more than just that person. It could be a public authority, it could be agency. So here you can see the roles, and then you can find the specific articles if you want to go and see what pertains to these roles. And as you can later see, for each one of these specific roles, there would be different set of requirements. So the roles are as follows. First is the provider, and the provider is someone who develops the AI system or the AI model. So these are the people who actually provide the AI model. And it doesn't matter whether it's free or paid. The only differentiation is whether this AI system is used for professional use or for personal use. And it doesn't matter where the location of the provider is. The next one is a product manufacturer. It's basically anyone who incorporates that AI system from the provider into their product. And that could be like somebody who's doing a chatbot or somebody who's doing a recommendation system, whatever it is. And the deployer is anyone that is using the AI system. Importer is someone who brings the AI system into the EU. So if it's developed in the US or elsewhere, if it comes to the EU and bears, even if it bears the name and trademark of a person in a different country in the EU, but it comes from outside and is deployed in the EU's, then you would be an importer. And distributor is kind of obvious. I think they're trying to cover the supply chain issues here. And authorized representative is also obvious. Is people, if the provider is not in the EU, but they have to have an office or people or salespeople. Very interesting part is at the bottom of this table, you see that they're basically talking about the exceptions to the EU AI Act, and if it's military, defense, and R&D, these requirements do not apply. So whether you would like it or not, that's basically what it is. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about is a set of prohibited AI practices. The fine for this is pretty big, and if you not comply and you do these practices, then the fine is $35 million or 7% of your revenue. So this is big. Remember, GDPR was 4%. So the three things I want you to remember here is the three no-nos is health, safety, fundamental rights. So in automotive, which I was working before, physical safety, financial operation, and privacy, I used to call it SFOP. Those are the ones you need to worry about. And here is health, safety, fundamental rights. So anytime I talk about some harm or they talk about some harm or risk or those type of things, then you need to keep those in the front of your mind. So practices that you are prohibited from engaging: deception. You deceive people into behaving or making wrong or harmful decisions. Exploitation is exploiting people's vulnerability, ages. You do something that targets a specific ethnic group or age, senior people, stuff like that. You can't profile people based on all their activities across social media. This one I call it Minority Report, but is based on the movie. So an AI system that is profiling to predict the risk of a person committing crime, if you have seen the movie with Tom Cruise. Remote surveillance is like somebody is scraping the CCTV or other things for facial recognition databases. And the next one is like all the protected traits if you're doing some biometric stuff to profile people. And then the other one is the similar, like real-time remote biometric identification if you just go use public place cameras and things like that. Now, obviously, there's exceptions, and that kind of opens the door for Big Brother surveillance, in my opinion. But they have exceptions where there's a name of abduction, human trafficking, or terrorist attacks. Now, the high-risk systems. There is a set of systems that are considered high-risk system. You can go look at Article 6. It was very blurry. There's a lot of reading there, so I contribute this list from my reading of the summary of ISACA. So you can see all the high-risk systems here, anything from critical infrastructure, which is obvious, to, interesting stuff like education and job training, detecting cheaters and stuff like that. So anyway, this is sort of an obvious list. I don't need to go through it, but if your system is considered a high-risk AI system, then there's a whole lot of requirement that you need to comply with. And I spend most of the rest of the video here. So here are a sort of a sample of the requirements here. And again, here the non-compliance is penalties are lower, it's 3%, and it going into effect February 2025. As of this recording, is that date has already kicked in. So the requirements, there are just, as I mentioned, there's just so many articles, but the best part is you can go to these articles, skip all the verbiage in the first 50, 60 pages, and then just go there and read. And some of this I have some summaries in other pages. But basically, risk management, anyone in cybersecurity understands what this means. But in terms of AI, there's some other risk, like I said, there's bias and there is safety and health and fundamental rights. Data governance is very interesting. It's pretty unique to AI. This is considered typically data ops, but there's a very sort of specific things that we talk about. Technical documentation and record keeping is kind of obvious. The transparency and provision of information to the deployers, I picked this one as well as the human oversight, because I thought these are worth covering separately. The very interesting stuff that I marked in red is registration and CE marking. So if you are developing an AI system that is categorized as one of the categories of high-risk AI, you need to register your system with an authority within EU, and you get a CE marking. And there's a specific requirements to registration. There's like, identities and identities for your system and contact information and blah, 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 lots of other things. And there is a database that is going to track all this. And there is obviously incident reporting. So, AI incidents can be a little bit different, but, these are the things you need to pay attention. And then there's a whole lot of other things that I mentioned here, but it's like the list goes on and on with the list of articles. Now, going deeper into some of the things that are interesting, like risk management. Risk identification, like I said, remember when you're thinking about risk, health, safety, fundamental rights. And, nobody in cybersecurity is stranger to risk management, but there's some interesting stuff here. Like, obviously, it's not just the risk during initial deployment, but what they call post-market monitoring. It's like you put your AI system in there, you have to monitor it over time to monitor for risk and the behaviors and biases and all other things. And then the interesting part, the reason I picked this one is like evaluate and estimate risk in when used for intended purposes. So I'm kind of seeing a gap, a sort of loophole there. Oh, this was not used for intended purpose. So I'm hoping they close that loop. And then the rest of it is sort of obvious here. In terms of data governance, this is one of the most AI-related, requirements that is a little bit different from normal cybersecurity stuff. So it covers training, validation, and testing data sets. It needs to be free of errors. A lot of times it says when applicable and when appropriate and stuff like that. But these are the things that are worth covering if you're getting into AI security. It talks about appropriate statistical properties. So it's like, if you're targeting a specific group of users or persons, you have to make sure that when pertaining to that group of people, you're not the data does not include biases. I guess at some point you need to prove that you're meeting the statistical properties in terms of maybe demographics or whatnot. Data collection process, the origin of data, and if you have personal data, definitely that's a flag. and they're talking about you have to have well-defined and well-documented data collection process and the preparation. And obviously the preparation, as you can see, this goes into the data ops again, and data processing stages. If you're annotating the data, if you're labeling, cleaning, any type of enrichment, and they talk about the enrichment as well. You have to be careful when you're adding synthetic data and stuff like that. And also your formulation of assumptions. What is the data is supposed to measure and model or whatnot. And then things related to availability, quality, and stuff like that. But the very interesting one is examination of view of possible biases. So they are taking bias very seriously, bias detection and correction. Like I mentioned, and you cannot. They specifically state that you cannot fulfill biases detection or correction with like fake data, synthetic data, and obviously the last one is personal data, which is kind of a lot like GDPR anyway. Some of the other interesting ones are transparency and user notice. So it's like you need to provide instruction for use, the identity and contact of the provider and their authorized rep, so people need to be able to contact and know where this comes from, and whoever to go to. The intended purpose, the level of accuracy, metrics, and robustness. This is sort of sorry, interesting. And then any known and foreseeable circumstance for misuse and risk. I mean, this is kind of hard, actually, I think, an expected performance. But, maybe these are some things that people would, they do the fine print waiver stuff here. And then even talking about appropriate specs for input data and data related to training and stuff like that. The most interesting part about transparency and user notice is they are requiring measures for human oversight. So they need to facilitate humans to be able to interpret the output of the system. And then in Article 14, they go specifically and talk about that the system needs to allow a human to override or stop a system. It's kind of like the button you push to stop the factory floor from operating. So the humans need to be able to disregard and override. So a part of this is not covered in this slide, but it's like there need to be methods for a human to get in and evaluate and stop things from going further. Article 15 is also related here. Is robustness is the normal business continuity stuff like backup, redundancy, fail-safe, stuff like that. But their middle bullet here is mitigation measure for AI system. They're talking about AI system that continue to evolve, like they continue to learn from reinforcement learning, from human feedback, from RAG, and from other things that they're becoming different over time based on use and feedback and other things. And then the other resilience measure that are mentioned here is basically this goes into sort of all the adversarial attacks and threats that people like OWASP and MITRE are trying to work against. So it's like detect and respond and resolve, control for data poisoning, model evasion, and all kinds of things that people attack AI systems. So this is sort of not something that the deployer or developer of AI system does, obviously, but they have to build measures against attacks like any other product. So here it is. That's the end of my talk today. And again, I wanted to put a plug for my services, the Avance Group, providing security architecture as a service, strategy and program creation for security, formal threat modeling, architecture reviews, SDLC cloud and infrastructure security assessment, hardware, device, IoT, OT, and quantum resistant and traditional cryptography, as you've probably seen from other video. So anyway, thank you for your attention, and I hope you like this talk. Subscribe if you like the talk, and I'm looking forward to post more videos about AI security and adversarial attacks on AI. Thank you.